Good morning. I'd like to start today by talking about gifts. Every aspect of our existence is a gift from Spirit or God, Allah, Jehovah, the ground of being, or the great mystery, whatever you want to call it. And we are not entitled to any of it. Our lives, our breath, our sight, our bodies, our reason, our food, our shelter, our parents, our children, our lovers and partners, our technology and all our stuff, the land, the water, the air, all of these and more, every bit of reality. These are all gifts for us to steward. And this is in direct opposition to consumer capitalism, which tells us that we, or someone, or something like a corporation, can possess, can own all these things. Perhaps the reverse is true and we're possessed by them. Some people certainly are. But these are all gifts which need to be received graciously, with gratitude and humility, and without thinking that we somehow own them. This is a spiritual practice, and it's much harder even than gratitude or generosity. These gifts are not ours. We are not entitled to them. They pass through us and we pass through them because, as Lewis Hyde has so written beautifully about gifting, the gift must always move. We must always be returning these gifts in one fashion or another, or the world stops. Think of a whirlpool or tornado. They have form only because of what is flowing through them, the water or the air. And so it is with the world and our lives. A gift that is not consumed or passed on becomes, in Lewis Hyde's words, a commodity. And a commodity is something whose exchange is simply transactional, makes no connection, and leaves no connection, makes no mark. And this is why commodities are associated with both freedom and alienation. We cannot hoard these gifts. When we do, the connections made by these gifts are broken. When the gifts of life and love cease to move, to flow, the world stumbles and maybe falls. And among other things, we get inequality, as great piles of these gifts are turned into profit and stop flowing and accumulate in the hands of the few. The circle of life gets broken and the world gets eaten up, which is where we find ourselves. For this is the paradox of the gift. When the gift is used, it is not used up. What is given away feeds again and again, while what is held onto feeds only once and leaves us hungry for more. Every such gift must be returned back to the world and to the great circle of life. And as they pass through our lives and our hands and our hearts, we must bless them and add to them and pass them on so that the world may continue, and the people may live. There's another way to refer to all of these gifts. We call them blessings. We say that we're blessed with good health, with long life, with a good job, with healthy relationships, with beautiful children. It's a pretty common way of talking about these things, one that's embedded in our language and in many cultures. So I think it's worthwhile to unpack that a little. In traditional religious language, to bless something is to sanctify, to make it holy. And there's some debate about the etymology of the word, but most sources trace it back to Old English and the act of consecration by anointing an altar with blood, typically the blood of a sacrificial animal. And that was back when your domestic animals meant survival for you and yours. And to give one up was a pretty significant act. To sacrifice is to give up something important or valued for the sake of other considerations. To make something sacred is to set it apart from the mundane, and in many cases to make it untouchable and unchangeable. But to be blessed in the way I noted before is to have been granted happiness or health or prosperity, or to have been endowed with some talent or aspect such as perfect pitch or photographic memory or physical attractiveness. But who or what does the granting or endowing? Many people would say it's the act of some divine power and that they're favored by their deities. That's pretty dangerous theological territory, because the flip side of that is that those who don't enjoy such blessings are not favored by those gods or goddesses. So is it any wonder we might hesitate to use such language? And the implied question is, where do such blessings come from? Luck? Divine favor? Good genes? Your socioeconomic status? Hard work? The accident of birth? The threads of good fortune are tangled together, and it's really hard to tease them apart, and many blessings, as we know, are mixed blessings. But whatever their source, I think we personally have a lot less to do with it than we'd like to imagine. And I think that understanding goes a long way toward keeping perspective on our lives and our fortunes. It keeps us humble, or it should. But wherever our blessings come from and however they show up in our lives, it's important that we bless the world in return. Whatever the depth and breadth of our blessings, be they many or few. They may seem like obvious questions, but why and how should we do that? Unitarian Universalists have long been described as being a heady bunch, which has always seemed pretty accurate to me. Heady, of course, is a euphemism for left-brained. Our heritage favors the rational side of things. We like to have reasons, sometimes perhaps too well thought out and complicated reasons for the things that we do. So when we talk about blessing the world, we tend to think in prescriptive terms. Be kind, give to charity, pay it forward, advocate for legislation that we like, change our language to change the world. And if we could just make all those things happen, then the world would be a better place. Well, perhaps. The intentions are good, but I think the record so far is pretty mixed. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do those things, but maybe we need to be working on the hips to fix the crick in our necks, so to speak. Trying to change complex systems with linear thinking can be extremely frustrating. A straight line doesn't always get you where you want to go. So in that spirit, let's take a little detour into that left brain, right brain thing. Back in 2009, Ian McGilchrist published a book titled The Master and His Emissary: The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World. In it, he contends that the popular notion of the brain hemisphere as respectively logical and creative in nature is superficial and just wrong. And that the correct view is that they pay attention in fundamentally different ways. The left brain being detail-oriented, the right brain being whole-oriented. In broad terms, we could say that it's the job of the right hemisphere to envision what is going on holistically, while the left one provides precision on particular issues. It's the right brain that's responsible for surveying the whole scene and directing all the data coming in, so it's more directly in touch with the world. So the right usually knows what the left is doing, but the left may not even be aware of anything outside its narrow focus. It has blinders on, which allows for that precision. And the hemispheres have a partnership that evolved over millennia. But like much of evolution, it's a bit of a hack, and one that can go wrong when one partner becomes too dominant. His larger claim is that the emphasis on left brain, precise categorical thinking has come at the expense of the bigger picture and has now reached a point where it's seriously distorting both our lives and our thought. So what has that got to do with blessing the world? Well, like a body worker who fixes that crick in your neck by adjusting your hips, we can affect change by doing something that may not seem to make sense at first. Some of you may remember the story of Jill Bolte Taylor, the neuroscientist who was able to observe and remember the experience of having a cerebral hemorrhage that shut down the left hemisphere of her brain. She watched herself lose the ability to speak, move, and understand. That must have been terrifying, huh? Well, here's what she has to say about it. It was as though my consciousness had shifted away from my normal perception of reality, where I'm the person on the exercise machine having the experience, to some esoteric space where I'm witnessing myself having this experience. I looked down at my arm and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. I can't define where I begin and where I end because the atoms and molecules of my arm blended with the atoms and molecules of the wall, and all I could detect was this energy. And I'm asking myself, what is wrong with me? What is going on? And at first I was shocked to find myself inside of a silent mind. But then I was immediately captivated by the magnificence of energy around me. And because I could no longer identify the boundaries of my body, I felt enormous and expansive, and I felt at one with all the energy that was, and it was beautiful there. End quote. As her left hemisphere ceases to function, she's able to fully access the right brain's experience of the world, of that sense of unity and belonging that seems to elude us much of the time. She goes on to say that religion is a story that the left brain tells the right brain. But if that relationship is out of balance, as Ian Bivilcris claims, then our work is to restore the balance and have the right brain tell the bigger story, the one that keeps the work of the left in perspective. Now, short of having a stroke, we human beings have millennia of experience in getting the left hemisphere to shut the frack up and listen and pay attention. Some forms of meditation, for instance, repeating a mantra, mind-altering drugs, fasting, prayer, ritual, and worship, and blessing the world in that original sense of sanctify, of making the world whole. So let's give that last one a try, shall we? I invite you to simply bless everything you see or hear or taste or touch, and everything that's unseen as well. Don't judge anything. Just bless and keep on blessing every chance you get. Bless the good and the bad, whatever you consider beautiful or ugly. Bless your enemies and your friends and every stranger. Bless the sun and the moon and the stars. Bless the trash and the trees. Bless it all. Bless it all. And if you can, raise your hand in benediction and speak aloud in that blessing. And I know that may be somewhat embarrassing in public, so just raise an imaginary hand and silently speak your blessings. And it's going to feel funny at first, but stick with it on a daily basis. When you get a free second at a stoplight or waiting in line, You know, anywhere, anytime you have something that you might be doing, like looking at your phone, bless the world. And you're going to be busy because there's a lot to bless. There's a whole big wide world to bless. And when we start to bless all the parts of the world, they are joined together by the blessings. And we begin to experience the world as a unity and ourselves as just a part of it, continually blessing and being blessed. And then we move into communion with the world. This changes the brain and our relationships to each other and the world. Jill Bolte Taylor notes that there was both freedom and challenge for me in recognizing that our perception of the external world and our relationship to it is a product of our neurological circuitry. And what we want to do is nudge those circuits in the right direction. No pun or politics intended. We want to nudge those circuits in the right direction to sanctify the world by blessing it. Now that can't work, says the left hemisphere. I got to figure things out. I got to slice the world into smaller and smaller pieces, seeking ever more precision. I've got to fix things, come up with a plan and execute it. I have all these prescriptions you should take. That's the way to change the world, says the left brain. But without communion, those plans really seem to flounder, don't they? And communion is something that the left brain just isn't capable of. Religion has to be a story that the right brain tells the left. And that brings me to a couple of conclusions. First, as a practical matter, we need to seek communion before action. Communion grounds our actions and our plans in something larger than ourselves by linking together everyone and everything involved. And second, as a spiritual matter, if we don't bless the world, who will? Maybe so. Thank you for listening. Go out and bless the world.